Hi everyone. A couple of people asked me how do we draw an object or a scene in 2-point perspective where the vanishing points run outside the page. Here's a little demonstration, a short one, to show you how this works. And I thought I'll turn it into a couple of exercises. And you can see from the drawing on the screen, I've actually moved the horizon line from the center of the doorway to the lower third of the doorway. So let's get started. For this demonstration, we are drawing an object with perfect symmetry right and left. So I'm drawing a vertical line, and I've just measured it to be 10 centimeters for myself, and I wanted to know where the center point is of that line. So it's a vertical line, and I've now made it into 4 equal sections. Very important, 4 equal sections. I'm using a ruler, but you don't have to. Right in the middle, I'm drawing a horizontal line, the same size right and left. So now I have a symmetrical picture, and the vertical is 4 units. I've decided, and that is completely arbitrary, the slant or the angle of my perspective on the left hand side. And now what I'm doing is the distance between that perspective and the horizon line and below the horizon line is equal, and I've just made it into 4 units as well. So I'm just going to dwell on this point for a while you're drawing this. The fact that the central line, which is the main leading edge, has been chopped up into 4 different units, and the left hand side is chopped up into 4 equal units, and I will do the same on the right hand side. It means that the ratio or the proportions of the middle central line is identical to the proportions of the right and left. So in other words, as long as the central vertical line is in the same ratio and proportions to the 2 edges, it means that all your perspective lines are going to be intact. So if you cut the middle line in half and you cut the edges in half, and in quarters you cut the edges in quarters, as long as you keep the same ratio, then all your perspective lines are correct. And that's what we've done here. I made the middle into 4 units and the 2 sides into 4 units, and all the units are equal. Then that works. Now I've just literally drew the door. What I'm doing here is identifying the depth. So the depth of the door follows the perspective lines. So you see where my ruler is, it's in between the 2 perspective lines. I guess the best way to describe it is, if you think of these perspective lines, if they were in parallel, you would draw these depth lines in parallel with them, but because they converge to a point, you've got to choose the same ratio between the top, your line, and the bottom. The important part of these 2-point perspectives is your horizontal lines, which are the width of the door, for example, and the width of the building. They are the right-hand side perspective lines, and the depth of the door is the left-hand side perspective lines. So now all I'm doing is I'm going over the object with a pen just to take away the distraction of all these perspective lines. So you can see that my horizon line is in the middle. The vertical is divided into 4 units, equal units. The two sides are divided into 4 equal units. And the connection between the side vertical lines and the middle line, where these units begin and end, are my perspective lines. And I'm just going to highlight the depth of the door now. You can apply this to any two-point perspective. The main thing that you have to start with, you have to define the steepness of the perspective, which is the very first left-hand side angle line that I drew, is how steep do I want it? The further away you are from the object, the less steep it is, and the closer you are, the steeper it is. I'm going to do the same drawing and the same doorway, and I'm going to preserve the size as well, but move my horizon line to 2/3 or 3/4 down the vertical line. So you see how my horizon line here is in the middle, which is 2/3 up the doorway. I'm now going to pretend that you are kneeling on the floor and you're looking up a little bit. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. You draw a middle line, and I'm just choosing 10 centimeters because that's convenient more than anything else. Divide it into 4 equal units, and then draw the horizon line. Now, if you can practice this with as many objects as you can, and then you'll get a feel for it, and then you don't need to constantly divide into equal units and measure. It becomes more of a visual thing. So I'm now dividing the center line into 4 equal units, and the third from the bottom, or the first from third from the top, first from the bottom, I'm drawing my horizon line. Kept it to the same width as the object above. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the units on the left-hand side the same size as the units in the drawing above, just so that you can see how, whilst we're using exactly the same dimensions, just by being lower down against the door, how different that doorway looks. So again, 4 units on the left, 4 units on the right, all the same sizes in terms of the left and the right. And the way I did it is I started from the horizon line and I worked down and then upwards. Just use the same unit size as the drawing above. So we now connect the dots, and you can start to see the sharpness of the building or of the object, because your eyes are lower down. Obviously, as you look up, it becomes a lot sharper. Again, as you noticed, we haven't used vanishing points at all. We just relied on the fact that the ratio of the right and left are the same as the middle. And now I'm drawing the doorway, which is the same size as the doorway above. And again, I'm looking at the depth of the doorway, and I'm choosing a line which sits very comfortably between my perspective lines. Because these perspective lines fan, they create like a fan shape, you can roughly guess where each point is going to be. But if you're struggling, you can divide each unit in half and draw more and more and more. You can draw an infinite number of perspective lines by cutting each unit in half on the left and the middle and draw a perspective line. And you can cut it in half again and draw another perspective line. And the reason why we do them in units and half units, because we're preserving the relationship and the ratio. So rather than taking dimensions in centimeters or millimeters, and you can get completely distorted, if you cut two lines, if you cut two parallel lines by half, then the third parallel line is going to be parallel to the two other lines. And that's how it works, is keeping the ratio. I keep using the same word, sorry. Now we're inking up the object, but you can see some noticeable things here. The head of the door looks deeper, because obviously, because you're kneeling down, you can see more of the head of the door. And the base of the door looks less deep, because obviously your eye is closer to it. And if you literally put your eye on the floor, you're going to barely see the bottom of the door. Now we shade the door, and that'll give you good, I hate keep using the word perspective, but it gives you a good way to put these two different objects in perspective. One of them is looking from below upwards, and the other one is your eye level is 2/3 of the doorway. So the key is, if you preserve the relationships of the right and left to the middle one, you can do as many perspective lines, and you do not need specifically the vanishing point. That, of course, will also apply if you brought the right or the left vertical lines closer together or further away. I really hope you found these little demos and exercises very useful. I strongly suggest that you play around with as many shapes as you can. Make the side verticals wider, shallower, narrower, and see how it affects it. But as long as you keep the relationship between the units in the middle wall, in the middle corner, and the sides, you keep that relationship, you will get your perspective lines right. Look forward to having your comments, and please do not hesitate to ask me if you need anything else or any other issues you have problems with. Thank you.